Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, one and all. This is Rustin Edwards live from Geneva with my illustrious co-host, Mr. Matt Stanley, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Smoking Barrel.
What a
Top of the
week.
day to you, Matt.
Top of the day to you. Now, I'm rubbing my eyes in jest, but Jesus, what a 12 days, 13 days that has been, right?
It's been a very interesting 12 days, and where are we at with crude oil? Oh, back where we were 12 days ago, around
Yeah.
$68 a barrel.
I mean, I mentioned this in my commentary a few times. Can you imagine if you um like like 2 weeks ago, you went out for a run, you fell over and you bumped your head and you were in a coma for 2 weeks, and you woke up and you went, someone woke you up and went, "Oh, hi, welcome back," and you went, "What happened?" And someone said, "Well, hang on." Israel started bombing Iran. Iran then retaliated. Brent went to 81. The US joined in and bombed nuclear sites. And then 6 hours later, there was a ceasefire. You go, I'll bang my head again because I don't believe you. So and then here we are back to normal. I mean, I've said this morning, like the old adage that yesterday's news, today's fish and chip paper. Jesus, back
Yeah,
to
that,
where we
that,
were, mate. Huh?
I mean, when you look at the broader economics, I mean, gold has come off the high. I mean, gas oil collapsed almost $100 a ton from where it was. I think
Yeah.
that's back to pre-attack levels around 680 a ton. I mean, gas oil at one
Yeah.
point was up $140 a ton at the commencement of the activity from Israel striking Iran. We've
Yeah.
had U.S. dollar weaken. U.S. dollar versus the Swissy now at 124, which is
Wow.
massively strong Swiss franc. So there's still a bit of flight of security going on in the markets, but nevertheless, stock markets rallied on the news of the ceasefire, and everything's all of a sudden everything is right in the world again.
I mean, the diesel story, we spoke about it last week, and all we can do is comment on facts and what's happening. We were trying to put it all into context, what it all may mean. But Sunday, what happened Sunday, or early Sunday morning here, when the US Operation Midnight Hammer or something they called it, total
Yep.
obliteration. There was a total obliteration, said the Donald. He said a few other choice words this week, but we won't talk about him for too long. Save me for swearing. Um, but yeah, look, on the back of that, everyone was like, I mean, our guys did brilliantly, got together Sunday. What are the likelihood? I called it wrong. I thought Brent would get to 90. I really did. I thought panic would ensue. It did early Monday. And just sticking with diesel, back to that a minute. Diesel on Monday morning, which is only 2 days ago, traded at $817.75 a ton. That is $109.77 per barrel. Yesterday morning, it was trading at $648.50, which is $87 a barrel. It was down $20 a barrel in 48 hours, less than that. And when we talk about war risk premium, it's dangerous to value what war risk premium is. It was like the poor options traders who were trying to price up what volatility was worth. I mean, take your number. People were just lifting everything they could because they thought that this was the start of a much wider conflict, and there will be a lot of people come the end of this week when markets settle down, which they have done, who will look at their weekly P&L and cry because it people, and maybe I was guilty of it. People just thought this is the Straits of Hormuz are going to be blockaded, or there will be some kind of issue. Oil won't get out, freight will go through the roof, and diesel was pricing that in. And then 2 days later, a ceasefire is announced, and bosh, back we are to where we were.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of plays into why was the ceasefire so easily able to come to fruition? Is that, honestly, I think it's just the Iranians didn't want to have to fight two people at once. They'd rather just focus on one. And so if the US was going to get involved and potentially continue their involvement after they bombed the nuclear sites, which is a threat that they had,
Yeah.
um, that's the reason why I think things simmered down rather quickly after the Iranians did their well telegraphed retaliation against the military airbase in Qatar and the base up in Iraq. Um, so Iran didn't have the gas in the tank, I think, to go any further. And I think that's why things have simmered down as quickly as they have. And Trump had to strong arm Netanyahu to stop bombing Iran after that rogue missile hit
Yeah,
Beersheba after 1 hour after the ceasefire was announced.
yeah.
Um, Doing so has kept the peace so far, knock on wood. Now, some
Yeah.
interesting fallout from all that. We had the Trump tweet about China is now able to go lift Iranian oil. I mean, that's a tacit approval of
I know. I was
busting
about to
U.S.
say that.
sanctions.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I mean, just back to your point, just briefly on the ceasefire was announced. It was met with some skepticism because it was a bit confusing. You know, Trump announced on his Truth social media platform, um, God bless Iran, God bless Israel. The US have signed this peace agreement. Israel went, no, we haven't. Iran went, no, we haven't. And then it got clarified. But it was met with some confusion. However, oil markets kept on selling off. They were like, everything's fine, kept on selling off. Everyone offered on. Seemingly we were going down $50 a barrel. Trump was coming out with tweets saying, told you oil prices are going lower. Even when the ceasefire was jeopardized, when Iran, like you said, these rogue bombs, oil markets didn't care.
Well,
It
they,
seemed,
they did pop up initially, and
yeah,
then when the Israeli jets did the U-turn and returned back to Israeli airspace, it said, "Okay, done."
I mean, okay, so what do you let's say for example, look, I just want to insert this caveat. I want peace. I want peace. I want interesting oil markets. I don't want interesting oil markets because of war. Let me just put that in there, okay? But let's say that there is something happens somewhere I don't know, Gaza, Iran getting stuff I don't know, and suddenly Iran go, do you know what? I'm going to fire on Tehran again. What do oil markets do? Do we go back up to where we were, or do
Well,
they just go?
I
It's
think
probably worth $2 now.
Well, I mean, I think you probably go back above 70, no doubt. I mean, so two, $5, you're back to 75, sure. If Iran takes the tack to attack Israel, or Israel takes the tack to go back and hit Iran, you got to think both sides of that coin are easily feasible at this moment in time. So nevertheless, so you probably go back to put 75 and structure probably goes bid again on crude. But
Yeah.
it's the one thing to think about in this whole situation is that A, there's no feasible way for one country to really control the other country. And I say that because A, they're separated by about 1,200 kilometers of distance. They
Yeah.
don't share a border. And so you'll never have an Israeli invasion of Iran, very highly unlikely. And you'll have an Iranian invasion of Israel either. And so all you do is just continue having this lobbing of missiles back and forth between each other. And it almost seemed like it was synchronized, or like, okay, Israel launched a strike, up, Iran retaliates. Israel does another strike. Iran, it was like watching a tennis match almost. I don't want to belittle it because, I mean, a lot of
No,
people were hurt, a
yeah,
lot of things were injured,
yeah,
but it was very, say, very measured in how things were carried out.
yeah. No,
And
what
I
I
think the
think,
Iranians held back more than they probably could have. But I think there's actually a real fear in the Iranian side that if they expose launch platforms, Israel would take them out. So they'd lose more capacity to do anything to defend themselves. And so you ended up with this kind of de-escalatory trend at some point would have gone to zero.
yeah. Look, I think I don't want to. I can't comment on military capacity capabilities of either country, but yeah, I think there was definitely some. Uh, more on the more on the Iranian side, sorry, in terms of negotiation. I think that was it was pretty much a no-brainer. But it, when we spoke about oil markets last week, we we had nothing to really compare it to, right? That's I think when markets say we're pricing in fear, it was like there was the threat of Straits of Hormuz. We'll come on to that in a minute. There was, is crude going to get locked into the Middle East Gulf? Are the Houthis going to strike? What's going to happen in the Eastern Med? are other forces going to join into this conversation? What do the Russians do? What do there was lots and lots, and there was nothing to really historically compare it to for people to say this is what will probably happen. There was a lot of conjecture. There was a lot of bullshit on LinkedIn. There was a lot of bullshit on all social media platforms. I think you made a good point. It's probably worth a pop above 70, right? And structure probably goes bid with a bit of that. If there was a sort of a chink in the ceasefire agreement, because now I think markets will probably say, well, the US will intervene. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Well, I think and the U.S. is going to either intervene on the side of on the side of trying to get things to stop.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, I don't think they're going to take a side. I think they're going to base, it's did Israel and the United States side with each other to attack Iran? Probably not. But
yeah,
what did the U.S. do? The U.S. attacked specific nuclear sites that Trump has threatened to attack many times before, and he followed through, and that's all the U.S. did.
yeah.
But it's a statement that the U.S. is there to make sure Iran doesn't develop any nuclear weapons,
Right.
which are they not? Who knows? And that was it. They weren't going to side with the Israelis. They weren't going to attack targets in Iran indiscriminately. But it does ratchet up that position that they could do that.
Yeah, and look, I think you're
And
right, and I
so,
think there was a lot of. I mean, I'm not going to lean on you for being American and sort of your opinion, but the "Make Iran Great Again" tweets, the "God bless America," "God bless Iran," "God bless America," "God bless Israel." Yeah, I think you're spot on. I don't think he took a side, but I think that it was an opportunity for Trump to get involved, which he did to disrupt nuclear. Right. Anyway, look, just moving on. The second point you made just then previously. The tweet that Trump sent out that China can continue to buy oil from Iran, China will purchase plenty of US oil too. Just wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Right. Trump seemed, I mean, flat price puked about $1 on the back of that. Once that came out, that was like, OFAC sanctioned Iranian oil, right? And they've also sanctioned ships that were going to call Chinese refiners. And then they've sanctioned the refiners who are buying Iranian oil, sorry, for buying Iranian oil. But the president of America has just come out saying you can continue to buy oil from Iran. I, I don't get it.
well, first off, let's call the chessboard as the chessboard sits, right? You can say whatever you want about Iranian sanctions, and yes, we have a strong Iranian sanctions regime. Reality, as I like to say, oil finds a way, and
Yeah, of
the
course, it finds a way when the president has said you're allowed to buy it. So of course you can find it.
yes, but it's been being bought for the last 45 years. I mean, these sanctions have been in place for so long. Everybody's figured out how to get around the sanctions. The U.S. is powerless to stop people from doing that. They've tried the secondary sanctions. It still doesn't stop it. So just go with the base reality on the ground that yes, China, you're still going to buy Iranian oil. You're still free to do so because guess what? You've been doing it all along anyway. I mean, it's just basic realization what's on the ground. I mean, let's stop playing the fantasy game. And I think what this tweet does do, it does open up a prospect that Trump is looking for sanctions relief for Iran.
Right, that's what I was gonna. That's a really. I'm pleased you said that because that's where I was going. Is that the first clear indicator that may, Trump may pull sanctions on Iran? I mean, bear in mind he's been so vocal and got up there with his stupid pad, with his stupid signature, was saying that I'm boxing Iran again after Obama, right? So it
So
doesn't
there,
seem.
there are sanctions that I believe that the president can remove. I don't think there are 100% sanctions because I think there are some sanctions that have been enshrined in law from the 1980s, the 1990s, which would require an act of Congress to remove.
Do you think?
Um,
Do you think that because it was a very, very, and look, this is the smoking barrels. This is
but,
Matt
but can I?
Stanley's.
Well, let me just finish my point here on
Go on,
this
go on.
before
Sorry,
you're going to
sorry.
quit. Now, the one thing though that the U.S. government, the president can do is he can direct OFAC not to enforce. So the law, just similar to like a lot of other presidents, when there's a law in the books that they don't like, they just tell the agency responsible for that law, don't enforce.
Really?
Yes. Look at all the immigration law that happens in the United States that has been they've been told don't enforce
Right.
certain aspects of the immigration law. Um, so it's up to the U.S. government to dictate to its the executive branch to dictate to the subordinate desk that report to the executive branch what they can directly enforce and what they can, they can have a bit of power around that. The president can do a bit of
Okay, interesting. Do
that.
you, do you? I mean, because the ceasefire came in pretty quick. I'm probably suspicious that there was something on the table before we saw the retaliatory strike in the Qatar U.S. Air Force Base. Do you think though that this tweet is the sort of real indication that for a ceasefire to happen, Trump had to offer the Iranians some possible sanctions relief?
Very good question. I would think that there'd be a carrot and a stick. Yeah. So they gave the stick. We drop bombs on your nuclear sites. Now, we'll allow you to launch missiles against our areas and call it done. And then we'll go back to a table and discuss true sanctions relief and true moving forward as long as you don't continue with this nuclear enrichment program.
Right. Okay. Do you
So
think we'll
I can see
ever?
that type of discussion developing out of all of this.
Yeah. Do you think that we'll ever know?
Oh, probably about another 5 years, or maybe even 50 minutes. We'll probably know. Who knows?
Probably when Donald Trump's been in. Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to say that. Um, no, look, it's our opinions. It's my opinion of the smoking barrel. I think that I'm going to bring up something about the Straits of Hormuz now because 3 weeks ago, my mum didn't know what the Straits of Hormuz were. No one could spell Hormuz. Suddenly, everyone's an expert on how very fragile it is. They got you to thank, Edwards. You told everyone what it is. Look, I just want to bring up something here because clarity amongst the chaos. That's what we try and do. We've said that before. What you and I try and do, but I certainly don't do it as well as my colleagues do. And they're looking at all this noise that's happening in the background, all this noise, and they go, right, shut up a minute. This is what it actually means, right? And this is an article that my colleague Homian wrote on Monday. And it was about the real threat of what the closure of the Straits of Hormuz could mean and how much volume could be blockaded, right? Sorry. Yes. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
So about one third of all volumes could bypass the Strait of Hormuz in the event of a blockade. We, Homian, I'm not going to, I just want to insert this. Sunday night, I was pretty much convinced that oil was going to 90. I think the vast majority of the oil market did, and it did to start with, and then things obviously calmed down a hell of a lot. And we're down what $20 a barrel off the highs that we saw early Monday morning. But enough of me messing up again. I want to talk about Homian never saw a maximum 5% chance that the Strait of Hormuz would be blockaded, right? And I'll go on to the live map in a minute because I think it's important. I just want to come down here for you to see this. So this is the Strait of Hormuz here. It's Iran, Bandar Abbas, Ras Al Khaimah, Yazd. You can see all this here. So the Adcop Fujairah, we'll touch on that in a minute. But this is a 1.5 million barrel a day pipeline that goes from the Murban fields around here, across the mountains into Fujairah, bypass the Strait of Hormuz. That's 1.5 million barrels a day. It pales into insignificance for how big the Petroline pipeline is. Here we are, AG, Arab Gulf, or Persian Gulf, depending on how you sit. Abqaiq is here. Bear in mind that after General Soleimani was assassinated in January 2020. This was or was it before or after the Abqaiq oil fields were attacked in Saudi Arabia?
That was well, it was after that thing with the pipeline was expanded.
Right. Okay. So here it is. These are the main fields, obviously here, and then Yanbu out in the Red Sea. 7 million barrels a day apparently of capacity. So you've got 8.5 million barrels a day of crude oil capacity. Crude oil. We're going to touch on that in a minute. This is the Straits of Hormuz. But people, and you've said did this, there was a lot of noise. People were, this is just a bit here if you want to read this, people. Like, comment, subscribe, like, comment, share. Smoking Barrel, your favorite energy podcast. There were lots of people who didn't have a clue what the Strait of Hormuz, even if it was a possibility, didn't have a clue what it would mean for oil markets and bought on the back of it because, well, that sounds right. That sounds about okay. But when you look at it, 8.5 million barrels of crude could have bypassed it. Yeah, sure, just for Saudi Aramco and just for ADNOC. But it is there. There was the capacity. So, Homium's written a really good article here, and that's what I mean. Clarity amongst the chaos. While everyone is saying Straits of Hormuz are going to be blockaded, no crude oil will get out. It's going to 110, 120, $130 a barrel. And that was the big banks who were saying that, not just me. You look at the logic behind it all, and this is obviously a hedge for these kind of issues. But yeah, I mean, look, let me bring up the map, Russ, so you can talk us through it. And I want your opinion here because when we were talking about the Straits of Hormuz and traffic, we saw a few boats that you mentioned to me on Monday morning, a few boats that were doing about turns as they were entering the straits. What was that story? Just while I bring this up.
But yeah, two oil tankers that were bound for different terminals in the Persian Gulf. As they were approaching the Straits of Hormuz, they did a U-turn, went back to the OPL position off of Corfacon,
Yeah,
and then about 12 hours later proceeded back into the Straits of Hormuz. And to me, that was just because either A, the terminals they were going to weren't ready for the ship, and so they told the ship, "Well, we're not ready for you."
yeah,
And so the taking the cautious approach, the ship owner said, "Okay, let's go back to OPL and wait," because other ships were transiting the Straits of Hormuz without any problems whatsoever. But the world focused on these two tankers that did a U-turn. Like,
yeah,
see, shipping companies are avoiding. Well, I think that was just, because two tankers did a U-turn does not mean that the whole world's jumping, we're not a bunch of lemmings falling off a bridge
yeah.
or falling off a cliff.
But I mean,
But
but oh,
nevertheless, tanker traffic, for the most part, didn't look like it diminished at all going through the straits. A lot more ships held up outside the straits,
yeah.
which, as you can see here on the map, off the Corfacon OPL limits, a lot of ships are still sitting there.
But when we
Um,
say OPL, some of the loadings say Al Shaheen crude, the Qataris, they said don't come in until we're ready. But you would have your outside port limits outside the port you were going to call, not 400 nautical
Well,
miles
outside
away.
port limits means that you're standing by in a place where you're not paying port dues. Because if you anchor inside of the port area of a port, you have to pay a fee to that port.
I see.
And so
Okay,
OPL is you're outside the port limits, therefore you're not encumbered to pay a fee to a port. It's a
gotcha.
cost saving measure,
There you go.
and there's a
It's
lot
more.
and and there are a lot of places where there's OPL anchorages. So this is one. You have one off of Malta, you have one off the Dardanelles, you have one in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. So, I mean, silly question from, excuse my maritime ignorance. If you're here, this is high seas, right? Can you drop anchor here?
I believe the water depth there is deep enough where you can still drop anchor successfully, but most likely you're just kind of drifting. I'm trying to remember from, I know that off the coast of Fujairah and Corfacon, you've got 100 meters of water depth.
Right.
And I think that extends pretty much all across the Straits of Hormuz to the Iranian coast.
And what's the length? I mean, again, sorry, I'm indulging in some geekiness here. We are still a Smoking Barrel podcast, people. Don't worry. But I mean, what's the length of a usual chain on, say, a Suezmax?
Suezmax can usually have up to 16 shots of anchor chain,
Right.
which is got to remember the conversion of a shot of anchor chain to depth of anchor. But it basically gives you enough anchor chain where you could anchor in 100 meters of water.
Wow. Okay. Good. Didn't know this. Love learning new shit from you, Edwards. It's really good. Let me ask you this because conscious of time, we've got so much to get through. Busier or quieter or about the same than what we saw last week when we were recording?
Oh, and for clarification, a shot of anchor chain is 90 feet.
I
or
know,
15
I know.
pounds.
We know what Edwards. We know it's 90 feet. We were about to tell you. um, this area here, it's Corfacan OPL. Something we raised Monday when we recorded. Something we raised Thursday when we recorded. I think last time. Busier, about the same, quieter.
Well, I mean, visually it looks about the same.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and it'd be something to see what it looks like in 2 weeks' time, because I think most shipping companies will still maintain a defensive standpoint and not go through the straits until they're ready to go load their cargo. And they'll stay outside until they're called in.
Yeah, look, I mean, just last one here. I mean, look, it's still busy, and I haven't seen. I think you're right. I think it's about the same. I think traffic going through the straits, either way, either direction, has picked up. OPO, I think you just saw a bit of a scattering. I don't think there was one concentrated area per se where everyone just went, actually, instead of going through, we're going to all queue up in that car park, in that spot. I think people, it was a variation, whether that was Sohar, whether it was Fujairah itself, Corfacan OPL. I think that it was, there wasn't a sort of concentration of people waiting around. And yeah, it would be interesting to see what that looks like in 2 weeks' time. I'll have to pull up a graphic of when we recorded last Monday just to see a point in time what it looked like. There are some guys who are looking at that right now. Look, I mean, end of the 12-day war, people were panicking. It was largely over now. So let's move on. I'm not dismissing it, but let's move on. So what do you think? Do you think markets go back to focusing on what they were worried about 2 weeks ago?
Well, I think that's what's already happened. I mean, why did we see the big flush out in gas oil and fuel and crude oil pricing and high sulfur fuel for that matter? Because everybody's realized, okay, there's going to be no disruption, and okay, the war is over, so we can now take that little bit of geopolitical risk off the table, and see how things work out on a normal supply and demand basis. So, people, half jokingly, I said to one of my friends here in Geneva, time to dust off those S&D analysis again,
Yeah.
and try to figure out where the market's going to be in the next 5 6 months, and how is OPEC going to respond? Because there is an OPEC meeting coming up.
Oh yeah. I remember them. OPEC. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
mean
so
that's the one
if
thing
we
I.
end up with
Sorry,
more
mate. Go on.
follow through off that Trump tweet about Iranian oil sanctions in China, we could be back to 60. We could be down to $60 crude all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I put on my commentary this morning, which was things that we were worried about before Iran and Israel were firing missiles at each other: tariffs, demand, inflation, recession, China, OPEC plus, sanctions, inventories, freight, and of course Nvidia.
Yep.
And I think the market goes back to worrying about those things.
Well, I mean, and if you think about it from a trade standpoint, okay, you have the holding period on the Chinese tariff coming to an end fairly soon, and so you do see a pickup in container freight going across Trans-Pacific, as people are trying to move goods prior to any type of potential rehash of 50%, 90% tariffs on Chinese goods.
Yeah.
So that's still there. It's still well in place. I think the one thing that's interesting is the amount of ships that are now said to be transiting the Red Sea. Even with all of this strife in the Middle East, it seems like people have started to resume going through the Red Sea on a bit more regular basis
Yeah,
as
yeah,
the to have cooled off what they were doing.
yeah. I agree, and I think the other thing, when it comes to the inflation argument, Powell, I think there's one more meeting in July, and then I think they take a summer break. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think insurance premiums. I think it's an insurance. I can't see an underwriter suddenly go, everything's fine. I'm gonna come back to
Well,
where we were.
I think you give a couple of weeks and premiums will be back to where they were before.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, you can't be an insurance guy saying, "Oh, we see a high risk of war in the Middle East." So where's your high risk? I mean, it's they have to make their money, they have to make their profit. So they made their profit as the war was escalating. Now the war is de-escalated. They're going to have to probably drop their rates back to where they were pre June 13th.
Well, I think you're right, but it's like any kind of premium, any kind of insurance premium. People are very good at putting the prices of things up, but very bad at bringing them back down. So
Well, that's what I said. It's going to take a couple of weeks.
I think it will be longer than that. Yeah,
this has
I'll
to be
see.
cemented for some time.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about those, I mean, that was a non-exhaustive list, obviously, of things that traders were worried about, market participants were worried about before the war. But I think there'll be one eye on the if the ceasefires are holding, um, more than ever. And I think that that elevated risk, the percentage of military conflict in the Middle East has increased, whether it's actually going to happen or not. And that's what an underwriter would base it on. So I think that you'll see premiums come down, but I don't think they'll go back to where they were.
I think for going into the Persian Gulf, I think they'll come down. I think they will. I think it'll take 2 to 3 weeks because at some point the shipping companies will tell the underwriters, really,
Yeah, maybe.
really.
Look, on that point where you and I are going to agree to disagree again, I'm on a holiday for the next couple of weeks, so we won't be with you. Maybe we'll do some early next week. We'll let you know. But look, again, want to insert the caveat: we're not trivializing the situation. People unfortunately perished. It's a really sad state of affairs. Our job is to comment on what it means for energy flows, for oil markets. So yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear. But anyway, $68 for oil. Here we are.
$68 from Brent, and that's where you're at. So
Yeah,
click like, comment, and subscribe. We thank all those who've become listeners and joined in. Hopefully,
yeah.
we'll get our issue with Spotify corrected, and we'll be able to get this one out today.
There we go. All right, mate. Take care.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.